Have you ever noticed that the moment a woman starts replying less, becomes emotionally distant, or suddenly acts like you barely exist, your first instinct is to chase her? You text more, you call more, you try harder. You wonder what you did wrong, you replay every conversation in your mind, searching for the exact moment everything changed. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That reaction is exactly what destroys your chances. Most men never realize this. But when a woman distances herself, the worst thing you can do is panic, because panic changes your behavior. And once your behavior changes, the entire emotional dynamic between you changes too. What happens next may surprise you. The more you chase, the more she pulls away. The more explanations you demand, the quieter she becomes. The more you try to prove your value, the less valuable you appear. It sounds backwards, doesn't it? Yet this pattern repeats itself in relationships all over the world every single day. Here's what most men misunderstand. They assume distance always means she has stopped caring. Sometimes that's true, but very often her silence has absolutely nothing to do with a lack of feelings. Instead, it has everything to do with emotional pressure, uncertainty, attraction dynamics, or her own internal conflicts. The problem is that men usually respond to silence emotionally instead of strategically. Imagine two different men facing the exact same situation. The first man notices she hasn't replied for several hours. His mind immediately creates stories. She's losing interest. She's talking to someone else. I need to fix this. So he sends another message, then another. Eventually, he asks, "Are you mad at me?" Without realizing it, he has shifted all of the emotional power away from himself. Now imagine the second man. He notices the same silence. He feels the same uncertainty. But instead of reacting, he observes. He stays calm. He continues living his life. He refuses to let one unanswered message control his emotions. Pay close attention because this changes everything. To a woman, these two reactions communicate completely different things. One says, "My happiness depends on your attention." The other quietly says, "I value myself regardless of your response." And confidence isn't something you announce, it's something people feel. This is why emotionally grounded men often appear more attractive without saying very much at all. But here's where it gets interesting. Sometimes a woman's distance isn't meant to push you away forever. Sometimes it's revealing something much deeper about both of you. And the way you respond during this exact moment determines whether attraction quietly grows or disappears completely. Now let's uncover the first psychological principle that most men never see. When a woman becomes distant, your instinct tells you to close the gap. It feels logical. If she's pulling away, you should move closer. But human psychology doesn't always follow logic. In many situations, attraction is deeply connected to emotional freedom. The moment someone feels pressured, whether intentionally or not, they naturally begin protecting their personal space. This doesn't only happen in relationships. Think about sales. The pushier the salesperson becomes, the less you want to buy. The same principle often applies to emotions. The harder someone pushes for attention, reassurance, or commitment, the more the other person feels their freedom shrinking. Most men never realize this. The issue isn't usually the text message itself, it's the emotional energy behind it. A simple, "Hope you're having a great day," feels completely different from, "Why haven't you answered me?" One comes from confidence, the other comes from fear. Women are often far more sensitive to emotional cues than men expect. They don't just hear your words, they feel the emotional state behind them. That's why two men can send the exact same message and get completely different reactions. Now imagine this situation. You've been talking every day. Suddenly, her replies become shorter. Hours turn into days. Your mind starts creating worst-case scenarios. You convince yourself that if you don't act immediately, you'll lose her forever. So you send a long message explaining your feelings, then you apologize for things you aren't even sure you did, then you ask if everything is okay. Instead of creating closeness, you've unintentionally placed the responsibility for your emotional security onto her shoulders. And that's heavy. But here's where it gets interesting. The confident man experiences the same uncertainty. He notices the distance, he wonders what's happening, but he refuses to let uncertainty control his behavior. Instead of chasing answers, he gives her room to breathe while continuing to invest in his own life, goals, friendships, and purpose. Ironically, this often creates the very curiosity that chasing destroys. Why? Because confidence creates mystery, neediness removes it. Psychologists have long observed that people naturally place greater value on what isn't constantly seeking their approval. When someone appears emotionally secure, they become more intriguing because they aren't trying to force a particular outcome. This doesn't mean playing games. It doesn't mean ignoring her to make her jealous. It means genuinely respecting both her space and your own self worth. That difference is enormous. Pay close attention because this changes everything. Sometimes a woman's silence isn't testing your patience, it's revealing your emotional habits. Do you react from fear or from confidence? Your answer shapes everything that happens next. Here's where female psychology becomes far more complex than most men imagine. Many men believe attraction moves in a straight line. If she likes you today, she should like you even more tomorrow. If she texts you every morning this week, she should keep doing it next week. But emotions rarely work that way. Attraction naturally rises and falls. Curiosity comes and goes. People need time to process their feelings. Women are no exception. Most men never realize this. A woman can genuinely enjoy your company and still create distance, not because she's lost interest, but because she's trying to understand her own emotions, handle stress, focus on other priorities, or simply regain a sense of emotional balance. The problem begins when a man interprets every moment of silence as rejection. Fear takes over. Instead of allowing the situation to unfold naturally, he starts trying to control it. And the moment control replaces confidence, attraction often begins to fade. Think about someone you've respected in your own life. Were they constantly asking for validation? Did they repeatedly seek reassurance that you liked them? Probably not. Their confidence came from within. The same principle applies in relationships. A woman is far more likely to feel emotionally drawn to a man whose identity doesn't depend on her attention. But here's where it gets interesting. Distance often acts like a mirror. It reflects back whatever emotional foundation you've built. If your confidence depends entirely on her messages, silence feels unbearable. If your confidence comes from purpose, discipline, friendships, and self respect, silence becomes information, not a crisis. Imagine two men waiting for the same reply. The first checks his phone every 5 minutes. He rereads old conversations. He watches when she was last online. He starts imagining another man has taken his place. By the time she finally responds, he's already exhausted himself emotionally. Now picture the second man. He sends one thoughtful message. Then he goes to the gym. He finishes his work. He spends time with friends. He learns a new skill. He enjoys his evening. If she replies, great. If she doesn't, his life continues moving forward. Notice the difference. The first man is waiting for permission to feel happy. The second has already built a life worth enjoying. That emotional independence is surprisingly attractive because it communicates quiet strength, not arrogance, not indifference, strength. Pay close attention because this changes everything. Women often respond more deeply to emotional stability than dramatic displays of affection. Grand speeches may create temporary emotion, but consistent self control builds lasting respect. And here's the twist almost nobody talks about. Sometimes her distance has nothing to do with testing you. It's your reaction that becomes the real test. Will you stay grounded under uncertainty, or will fear convince you to abandon your own value? The answer determines whether attraction has room to grow or slowly disappears. By now, you've probably realized something important. A woman's distance is not always the problem. Your response to that distance is. This is where many men unknowingly sabotage themselves, not because they lack good intentions, but because they allow fear to dictate their actions. Most men never realize this. When you're afraid of losing someone, you begin negotiating against yourself. You cancel your own plans to be available. You answer every message within seconds, hoping she'll notice your effort. You stop expressing your opinions because you don't want to upset her. Little by little, you start becoming the version of yourself you think she wants. instead of the man she was attracted to in the first place. And that's where attraction quietly begins to disappear. Why? Because confidence isn't built by constantly seeking approval. It's built by having standards, boundaries, and a life that doesn't revolve around one person. Think about the beginning of most relationships. You were focused on your goals, you had hobbies, you laughed easily. You weren't trying to impress her every minute because you weren't afraid of losing her. Ironically, that relaxed confidence is often what attracted her in the first place. But here's where it gets interesting. Once fear enters the picture, many men stop leading their own lives and start reacting to hers. If she's happy, they're happy. If she's distant, they're anxious. If she takes longer to reply, their entire day is ruined. Without realizing it, they've handed over control of their emotional state. That's not love, that's emotional dependence. And emotional dependence creates pressure that slowly weakens attraction. Instead, become the man whose emotions are guided by his values, not by someone else's texting habits. That doesn't mean becoming cold or pretending not to care. It means caring without losing yourself. Respect her space. Respect your own. If she reaches out, respond with confidence instead of relief. If she needs time, let her have it without chasing explanations. If she returns, welcome her without resentment. And if she doesn't, accept reality with dignity instead of desperation. That kind of emotional maturity is rare. It shows strength because it says, I appreciate you, but I won't abandon myself to keep you. Pay close attention because this changes everything. Real confidence isn't proving your worth to someone, it's knowing your worth even when someone fails to recognize it. And that leads us to the most important lesson of this entire video. Now we've reached the lesson that connects every point we've discussed. When a woman distances herself, your goal should never be to make her come back. Read that again. Your goal is not to chase, convince, pressure, or prove your worth. Your goal is to respond in a way that protects your self-respect while giving the relationship the best possible chance to succeed. Most men never realize this. The strongest position you can ever have in a relationship is emotional stability. Not because it guarantees she'll stay, but because it guarantees you won't lose yourself. Here's the biggest revelation. You cannot control another person's feelings. You cannot force attraction. You cannot negotiate genuine desire. But you can control your mindset, your actions, and the standards you live by. And that's where real power begins. Imagine looking back a year from now. Which version of yourself would you respect more? The man who spent weeks chasing someone who kept pulling away? Or the man who stayed calm, focused on his purpose, respected her decision, and continued building a life he was proud of? The answer is obvious. Because confidence isn't about making someone choose you, it's about becoming someone who doesn't abandon his values to be chosen. But here's where it gets interesting. Ironically, this is also the mindset that often creates the strongest attraction. When a woman sees that you're emotionally secure, patient, and genuinely fulfilled, she no longer feels responsible for carrying your happiness. She experiences you as a partner, not a burden, and whether she comes back or not, you still win. If she returns, you're meeting her from a position of strength instead of desperation. If she doesn't, you've protected your dignity and created space for someone who genuinely values your presence. That's a victory either way. So the next time a woman becomes distant, remember these 5 principles. Don't panic. Observe before you react. Don't chase. Give space without playing games. Don't seek constant reassurance. Build confidence from within. Don't abandon your purpose. Keep growing every day. And above all, never sacrifice your self-respect for someone's attention. Pay close attention because this changes everything. The right relationship isn't built by chasing someone who keeps running. It's built by 2 emotionally healthy people choosing each other freely, consistently, and with mutual respect. The moment you stop trying to force what should happen naturally, you become calmer, wiser, and far more attractive than you ever were while chasing. Remember, your value is not measured by how quickly someone replies to your messages. It's measured by the character you display when life doesn't go your way. If this video gave you a new perspective on female psychology and relationships, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe for more psychology based relationship insights, and comment below. Have you ever chased someone who pulled away? And what did you learn from that experience? Your story might help another man who's going through the same situation right now. Until next time, keep your standards high, your mind clear, and never let the fear of losing someone make you lose yourself.